You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Does America deserve Donald Trump?
Well, I would have to say no, we did not deserve that. You know, I'm the mother who says, eat your spinach. Maybe I should have given them more entertainment.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead? Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
I was on the way to winning.
We could find no evidence of collusion.
I'm going to keep saying that we need to impeach him.
Joy Behar has personally called Mike Pence to apologize for our outrageous crack she had said on The View.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you.
Exactly.
That's called mental illness.
Mental illness.
My Christian faith is probably the most important thing in my life. I just couldn't be silent.
Joy, you're a television person. You said it on the air. You ought to apologize on the air as well.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
I had to point to myself to start the program today because Kelly, our intern, missed her cue and didn't point at me to start the program. Kelly. So sometimes you want to do it right, you just got to do it yourself. All right, welcome to Focal Point, brand new day of broadcasting here on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Brian Fisher, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent, as always. And the program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio, and you are listening to the American Family Radio Talk Network. I want to dive right into the passage for today. We are reading using a schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. Pray.afa.net. Encourage you to go there, bookmark that page, open it up first thing in the morning, read the passage for the day in your own copy of the scriptures, and then pray the prayer back to God that you'll find there in the middle of the page. Now, in chapter 15 and 16 of 2 Samuel, this is where Absalom, remember Absalom was the son of David, third-born son. The firstborn son, Amnon, raped Absalom's daughter, or sister rather, who was also David's daughter. And King David, did nothing about that. The rape occurred. And he did nothing to punish Amnon, his firstborn son, because of his love for Amnon. Didn't want to get him in trouble. So he allowed his daughter to suffer the humiliation of rape with no punishment. This teed off Absalom, who's the older brother, felt the responsibility. So a couple of years later, he murders Amnon in cold blood. That's vigilante justice. But that's the door that David opened when he would not accept responsibility to discipline and confront his own children. So Absalom had to flee. And Joab eventually at one point worked out a reconciliation between Absalom and David. He comes back to Jerusalem, lives in his own quarters, but actually has an audience with David, and they hug and embrace. And it's a shallow reconciliation because Absalom was still stewing over the fact that he had never punished Amnon for what he'd done to his own sister. And Absalom had not repented of what he had done to Amnon, had not repented of his bloodthirstiness and his violence. So the time came when Absalom decided he was going to take control of the throne himself. So what he did, he went out and got 50 young men, buff guys, Delta Force type of guys, to run before him as he went around town in a chariot pulled by a horse, which is the way kings went around in the ancient Middle East. So he was pretending to be a king. He would stand outside the palace. People would come up looking for an audience with the king, and Absalom would look all sad and says, I'm really sorry, but David hasn't appointed anybody to take care of people like you. There's nobody to hear your complaint. Now, if I was in charge, it'd be different. I'd take care of you. If only I could be a judge in the land, you'd see that things would be so much different. So he's campaigning to get the people to like him, and he stole the hearts of the people away from David. He was a good-looking guy, and he was winsome, and so he took away the heart of the people from David and made them loyal to himself. And so the day came when he took a whole bunch of people down to Hebron, which was David's hometown, and he had himself declared king. When the word got back to David, he knew that he had to split. He had to get out of Dodge because he knew what Absalom had done to Amnon, and there was no reason to think he would not do it to anybody else that stood in his way. So David and his troop, they head out of town, and when they get to the other side of the Mount of Olives, David is trudging up the Mount of Olives, the path to the Mount of Olives. He's going barefoot. He's got his hood pulled over his head, covered with dust, walking up the Mount of Olives. That's the same path that Christ walked down when he came into Jerusalem for the triumphal entry. And here's David making his way out of town, just slinking his way out of town because he has been run out by his own son, who launched a coup d'etat successfully. Now, when David gets to the other side of the Mount of Olives, he goes through a little village called Bahurim, and all of a sudden this guy named Shimei, who was a descendant of Saul, related to Saul, he comes out and he starts yelling at David, starts hollering out curses to him, starts cursing David and throwing rocks at him, actually throwing stones at the king. And Abishai, who is one of the three sons of David that were his leading warriors, said, look, give me leave, king, and I'll go across the road. He was on the other side of the road for safety. I'll go cut his head off. That's literally what he said. I'll go cut his head off. And David said this very striking thing, what David says to Abishai. Abishai says, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and take off his head. The king said, what have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? That's not my spirit, he says. It's not my spirit to seek revenge. It's not my spirit to seek punishment. And so I don't have anything to do with you. We got nothing in common here about how we're thinking about this. If he is cursing because the Lord has said to him, curse David, then he says, it may be, back up, let me find my place here. If he is cursing because the Lord has said to him, curse David, who then shall say, why have you done so? And David said to Abishai, behold, my own son seeks my life, how much more? Now may this Benjamite leave him alone, let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look on the wrong done to me, and that the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing today. So David and his men went on, and Shimei went along the opposite hillside, cursed him as he went, and threw stones and flung dust at him. Finally, David got down to the Jordan River, where it says he refreshed himself. So what are we to make of this? Well, I think there are some things we learn from David about the character that he demonstrates in this story, and that is that he recognized that this whole event, as painful and difficult and troubling as it was, might be something that had come into his life from the Lord. He says, maybe this in some way, even this cursing, maybe this in some way is from the Lord, and he has a purpose for it in my life. And he says, I'm trusting God to be the one that looks on the wrong that is done to me. When David accepts this mistreatment on the part of Shimei, he doesn't say, hey, this is okay what he's doing to me. He doesn't say, this is all right. He says, maybe this is from the Lord. There's a purpose here I don't see. And he says, the Lord is going to see the wrong that has been done to me, and he is going to avenge me in his time. The Lord will repay me with good for his cursing today. So I think he realized one way, when we're going through a bitter time, there's some kind of reversal or whatever. One of the things we need to do is realize that one way or another, this thing may be from the Lord. You don't have to put a happy face on it, pretend it's fun. He refers specifically to the wrong that's been done to him. It's just plain wrong. But, and if you come to this realization, it doesn't mean that the pressure will automatically go away. It may last longer than you think you can take it, because Shimei kept right on doing it. But the promise of God, according to this passage of Scripture, is that if we will bear up patiently under suffering, there will be a reward, a payday coming. Some favor, some surprise, some serendipity, some blessing, some cool thing that will come into our lives as a reward from God for being faithful to Him in suffering. Well, let's pray if you'd be kind enough to join me. Lord God, I pray today for myself, for my family, for the listening audience of Focal Point, for every man, woman, and child in this land. for all of our elected officials, and for our president, President Trump. Lord, we know there will be times in our lives where we will feel sold out and undercut and betrayed by the people close to us, people we thought we could trust. Pray that you will see us in our distress and repay us with good for any cursing we may have received. In Jesus' name, amen.
You shall not murder. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. This is the sixth commandment of the 10 commandments. You shall not murder. We are asking schools all over America to put this on their marquees, put this on their signs out in front of their school for 1 week to remind America's students that innocent life is precious. Help us spread the word about this campaign to your friends and family. Please go to our website, afa.net, and sign our open letter to America's schools. We need to proclaim this message, you shall not murder, across the land. Why? Because gun control alone will not solve matters of the heart. We need our young people to understand that murder is a violation of God's law, and also it's a violation of the laws all across this land. So help us. Go to afa.net and spread the word.
And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. Esther, a young girl, became queen of the Persian Empire when Israel was subject to Persian rule. A wicked man named Haman tried to get the king to exterminate all Jews. Esther, a Jew herself, was queen when this genocidal conspiracy was brought to bear, but her uncle Mordecai put her royal position in perspective. Perhaps God made you queen just for this very moment, to intervene on behalf of the Jewish people. Like Esther, perhaps God gave you the platform, position, and influence you have for this very moment to stand against darkness. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this.
Visit the Hamilton Corner on the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association. This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy. I'm Brian Fisher, welcoming you back to Focal Point on the American Family Radio Network. Let's just jump right into what we want to get to today. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is that we have an action alert that AFA has prepared, and I would encourage you to participate in this. We want to ask you to sign a petition that will be sent to President Trump, urging him to withdraw the nomination of Kai Feldblum as the commissioner for the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. Now, we talked about her extensively yesterday. You can see the action alert at the Focal Point Facebook page. Got the link right there. One of the first things you'll see on the page. Encourage you to just click on that link, take action, add your name to the petition. We talked about it at length yesterday, but in this action alert, we have preserved some of the radical things that Kai Feldblum has said. Now, she was actually appointed to this position originally by Barack Obama. So she, in essence, is a Barack Obama holdover. Her term is scheduled to expire on July 1st of this year. So if Donald Trump does nothing, if he does not renominate her, she is released from her position and is out of our misery. This woman is a menace, ladies and gentlemen. She is a menace to the pro-family movement. She is a menace to religious liberty, and she is a menace to all of our culture. Remember, this is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. This is about employment. This is the commission that oversees employment in the United States. Every single workplace in America would be under the possible influence or even control of this woman. And remember, she's the one that said anytime religious liberty collides with the homosexual agenda, religious liberty will lose every time. She says, I'm having a hard time, this is a quote, I'm having a hard time coming up with any case in which religious liberty should win. Let me repeat that. When there's a conflict between the homosexual agenda and religious liberty, she says, and I quote, I'm having a hard time coming up with any case in which religious liberty should win. That's what makes her such a menace. She could bring this toxic poison, this toxic mindset, insert it under force of government pressure into every workplace in America. You know, and to give you an idea of the danger that she is, she joined with the ACLU to argue for a transgendered employee's rights before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. This is a case where a Christian businessman who ran a funeral home had an employee who decided he was a woman. He started to go through the transition thing. He was a guy wearing women's clothes to work. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. This is different than selling balloons or something like that. This is a funeral home. People expect a certain decorum. They expect a certain level of professionalism in the environment. You don't want to walk in there and have a guy with a mustache wearing a dress and stilettos. You just don't want to do it. And if you're a businessman running the place, that's not the image you want for your company to have. So this guy said, look, I'm going to have to let you go. He sued, and the court sided with the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Even if you're a funeral home, if you have a transgender, you have to hire them. You got to pay them. You can't fire them. That is Kai Feldblum. So she's a positive menace. But you can sign this petition today, and you can make your voice heard. You can go to afa.net, find it right on the front page, or you can go to our Focal Point Facebook page, and you can click on the link, and it'll take you right to the petition. Now, here's a winnable war moment. This is also from Donald Trump. He's the one that nominated Kai Feldblum. And again, we don't know which advisors were behind that. I think there's a lot of things that go on in the administration that the president can't possibly know about. But at any rate, here is a good thing. Here's a winnable war. We just saw we got a problem we got to deal with, Kai Feldblum. Here is a winnable war moment. Donald Trump is about to issue an executive order on health care that will protect doctors who refuse to perform abortions or treat transgender patients. That right now is the crux of conflict in the law today. What happens to people who claim to be transgendered, who claim to be trapped in the wrong gender body? And we had a movement all over the country to force people to treat transgenders or forbid them from treating transgenders, say psychotherapy, if it conflicts with the law. So Donald Trump is saying, no, we're going to have a new guideline. It's going to protect doctors and healthcare workers who have moral or religious objections to performing abortions, for instance. It's broader than this, but it includes abortions and treating transgender Americans. I mean, there's a move, actually, to force surgeons to perform what's called reassignment surgery. It's nothing more than genital mutilation. It's surgical mutilation of their bodies. It leaves them scarred for life. And there's plenty of movement afoot to compel surgeons to engage in those kind of surgeries, and at a minimum to be compelled to provide hormone treatment for people that want to go through this kind of transition. Trump says we are going to protect people's religious liberty. This is according to Politico. So it'll make it easier for health workers to opt out of some of these offensive, conscience-violating services, and medical organizations which don't give doctors and healthcare workers that leeway could wind up being punished as they should. Remember, Donald Trump established a new civil rights office within the Health and Human Services Division. This division would be able to audit healthcare organizations to make sure they're complying with these new procedures. So good for Donald Trump. That is a winnable war moment, protection of religious liberty. Now, here is another winnable war moment. You are aware of what the Bible teaches about the flood. I just want to read you one verse from the story of the flood in Genesis chapter 11. This is according to Noah's log. I think the source for the flood account was the ship's log that Noah kept on board the ark. Kept track of the days they were out, the number of days it took for the rain to fall to the point where the ark was actually lifted off the land, number of days the rain fell, how long it took for the rainwaters to subside. This is Noah's log. We're in touch with Noah's actual ship's log here. And he says this, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. And rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Notice that the writer, Moses, makes specific reference to all the fountains of the great deep bursting forth, and then the windows of heavens. So there were two sources of water for the flood, not just the 40 days and 40 nights of rain, but the fountains, the deep fountains of the deep burst forth. The water came bursting up through the surface of the crust of the earth and began to spill out over all of the surface of the earth. Remember, today, the 71% of the earth is covered with water to an average depth of 2 miles. Where did all that water come from? Remember, when the earth was created, there was only one land. All land was one thing, and there was only one ocean, one sea. But after the flood, then things changed, and I believe that topography changed. I believe the mountain ranges were formed during this period of the flood when the great deeps burst forth, tremendous tectonic and seismic activity, a lot of topographical changes. I believe this is where the mountain ranges of the earth were formed. Now, here comes a series of studies that for the first time have scientifically corroborated with direct evidence that the earth has oceans of water deep within the mantle. Now, what tipped them off is they recovered some diamonds from deep in the earth that had water trapped inside them, which means that the water had to be there deep in the earth when it got trapped inside these diamonds. So they have discovered water hundreds of miles deep below the earth's surface, and it corroborates the verse we just read in Genesis 7. The latest study is by a University of Nevada geoscientist by the name of Oliver Schauner. I'm not sure how he says his name, Schauner. They found traces of water trapped within diamonds that were pushed up to the surface by intense pressure. The study, evidence for aqueous fluid, that's water. That's when scientists want to talk about water, they call it aqueous fluid. And when we talk about diseases you get from volcanoes, we call them diseases you get from volcanoes. We'll hear what Kelly calls them here in just a minute. So this is aqueous fluid in the Earth's deep mantle. This was published in the journal Science. And so the professor says, they found samples from China, Republic of South Africa, and Botswana. And he said this makes it clear that this is a global, worldwide phenomenon. Now, the Earth's mantle makes up more than 80% of the Earth's volume, and scientists have been skeptical that water could be found. Now, remember, they're relentlessly searching for water on Mars. They doubted that there was any water in the mantle of the Earth. And this Schauner, by the way, came across this water by accident. They weren't looking for water. They were looking for carbon dioxide. Again, this is part of this whole global climate stuff, global warming thing. Carbon dioxide to them is the villain of the piece. The Earth is going to be consumed and burned to a cinder because there's too much carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is not causing global warming. Carbon dioxide is a plant food. But that's what they were looking for anyway. And they haven't found any. We're still looking for it, he said. But this discovery indicates that there is water-rich fluid in the transition zone between the upper and lower mantle. So this is the first time, said Oded Navan, a mantle petrologist at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He says that's the first time that we see water at such depths. Here's another recent study beginning in 2014, based on wobbles in the Earth's rotation and other phenomenon, have postulated, listen to this now, this is going to sound a little bit boring and dense, but this is very important because it confirms the teaching of the Word. These studies have postulated that the amount of water inside the mantle could be as large or larger than all the water found in the oceans on the surface of the planet. And studies have also indicated the fluid may influence all sorts of geological processes, including the grinding of the tectonic plates, the formation of volcanoes, and I would add mountain ranges, and the movement of Earth's elements. So the scientific community now, in 2014, coming around to affirm something that's been in the Bible since day one. So once again, science finally catching up to Scripture. Last June, researchers examining the rumbling of seismic waves made the argument that a huge amount of water resides within the planet. This is from observations made by Yale University geophysicist Jennifer Gerard. January 27, here's another study led by Zdenek Futera of the University College Dublin in Ireland, published in the Earth and Planetary Letters publication, postulated that the mantle was filled with fresh water exceeding the amount of saline fluid found in all the Earth's oceans. So, ladies and gentlemen, Bottom line, there's now abundant scientific evidence that there is plenty of water trapped in the Earth's mantle. There are fountains of the deep that very likely were the source of the floodwaters, as the Bible says. As I've told you before, ladies and gentlemen, do not doubt this book. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary, and welcome to Bring Every Thought Captive. I had the great privilege of attending the incomparable Billy Graham's funeral service on Friday, March 2nd here in Charlotte. Every Christian I have visited with about the celebration of Dr. Graham's homegoing has been moved and inspired by the service. The tone of the entire event was set by the following quote printed on the back of the service's official program, quote, "Someday you will read or hear that Billy Graham is dead. Don't you believe a word of it. I shall be more alive then than I am now, and I will have gone into the presence of God," end quote. One tribute seems to have risen to the level of being the high point of the service for a remarkable number of people who watched or attended the service. That was the tribute from Billy Graham's daughter, Ruth. I know her story touched me very deeply. Since that day, I have often pondered why that particular story has provoked such a visceral, positive, widespread response. First, what did she say? Ruth Graham said that she was divorced, had married a second time despite her parents' misgivings, and then had to flee that abusive relationship. She shared how she was driving up the winding road to her parents' mountain home, wondering what kind of reception she would receive. Would they tell her, "We told you so," or would they scold her or express grave disappointment? After all, her father was Billy Graham. And yet when she pulled into her parents' driveway, there was her father waiting, and as she stepped out of the car, he embraced her and said, "Welcome home." Ruth Graham then said that while her daddy wasn't God, he represented God's unconditional love at that moment. And she was right. That is the unconditional love of our Heavenly Father, open to all who accept Jesus as Lord and Savior. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net. afa.net.
Wow! Got everybody in the studio pointing fingers at me. That was an unnerving experience. So,
job well done.
Anyway, just an update on a couple of stories. Remember we talked about Flippy, the robotic hamburger flipper?
Yeah, Flippy.
They've already had to lay him off.
Wow.
Laid him off after one day because they couldn't keep up with him. They didn't have enough human people to put enough patties and then enough people to put the lettuce and the tomato on the burgers when he got done with it. So he's already on vacation after one day.
They could invent another robot named Patty or something.
Yeah.
You know, throw the patties out there and the problem solved.
Yeah.
Well, why does it always go back to that song Flipper?
Yeah, that was a TV show.
Flippy.
Yeah.
The dolphin, was it dolphin or a porpoise? Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, the phone booth is back, by the way. You have a lot of ritzy hotels now have put phone booths in where people can go with their cell phones and have private phone conversations. So the phone booth is back, means we could be seeing Superman returning anytime soon. Now, I told you about, we were talking about the tectonic plates and all of the eruption of the fountains of the deep and how the eruption of these waters could create seismic activity, create the mountain ranges. Now, you might have heard about this. I don't know if you know about Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone National Park is actually in the mouth of a giant volcano. All of Yellowstone Park is the mouth of a giant volcano. The opening is called a caldera, and it's rumbling down there, and there are speculations that at some point it's going to erupt, and there will be a super volcanic eruption that would kill 87,000 people immediately, and 2/3 of the United States would become immediately uninhabitable. So our advice, travel advisors, a travel advisory from Focal Point on American Family Radio Talk Network, be advised to stay away from Yellowstone National Park because if it goes off, not only might you be killed, but if you survive, you might wind up with a very serious disease from breathing volcanic dust. Kelly, what is that disease?
Pneumonia ultramicroscopic silicovolcanicinosis.
Do not let this happen to you.
I don't want that. I don't know what you.
Didn't Julie Andrews sing that once?
Yeah, I think they made that
was
into a
in
song.
the second verse of Supercalifragilistic. They just never got. Most people haven't learned that one. Now, a couple things I want to talk about to move into what's going on in D.C. right now is, let's start with this first. Let's grab the clip from Mike Pence. Oh, I put this up. I got a companion soundbite to this, which I didn't get until late this morning. But here is Mike Pence last night on Sean Hannity's program talking about Joy Behar. Remember, Joy Behar said, look, if you're a Christian, it's a form of mental illness. Christianity is a form of mental illness. And if you believe that Jesus talks to you, then you are woohoo lunatic. Even though Oprah's out there listening actively for God. So maybe Oprah is as much of a lunatic as Joy Behar thinks we are. But anyway, it was an insult to Christians everywhere. And Mike Pence told us about what happened privately with Joy Behar and him, clip 1.
I felt it was important that I defend the faith of tens of millions of Americans against that kind of slander. And I did so. And, I give Joy Behar a lot of credit. She picked up the phone. She called me. She was very sincere. And she apologized. And one of the things my faith teaches me is grace. Forgive as you've been forgiven. So
does mine, but I'm not as good at it as you.
Well, look, I said to Joy, of course I forgive you. That's part of my faith experience. But I did encourage her, and I'm still encouraging her, to use the forum of that program or some other public forum to apologize to tens of millions of Americans who were equally offended by what she and what was said. Makes me question.
All right, so Mike Pence said, graciously, Joy Behar called me. She apologized for insulting me on her national TV program. I graciously accepted her apology, but Vice President Pence said, I also encouraged her, look, there are millions of Christians, tens of millions of Christians in the United States who were equally offended by what you said, and I would encourage you to use your national platform, use your program to apologize to those Christians as well. Well, here's what Joy Behar said this morning on The View.
So I think Vice President Pence is right. I was raised to respect everyone's religious faith, and I fell short of that. I sincerely apologize for what I said.
Okay, so Joy Behar says, I sincerely apologize for what I said. So Joy Behar apologizing to all Christians across the United States, and maybe she'll be just a little more cautious in the future. What's interesting to me is how soft-spoken Mike Pence has been through all of this thing. Never expressed any outrage, never expressed any anger, never made any demands on Joy Behar. There's a Bible verse that says in Proverbs that a soft answer turns away wrath. So Mike Pence has had a soft answer for Joy Behar all the way along, and it's turned away her wrath. She's now apologizing to Christians all across the country. Good for her. Now, in D.C., the story of the day is Rex Tillerson being fired by President Trump. And a couple of dimensions to this that are kind of intriguing. One is that he found out about it on Twitter. That's how we found out he'd been fired. So it's kind of intriguing. Was Obama kept finding things out by listening to it on the news. With Trump, you find out about it by following his Twitter account. So he found out. He was told, John Kelly, the chief of staff, called Rex Tillerson in Kenya on Friday and said, Rex, there's an announcement coming. It has to do with your employment. He didn't know when it was coming. He didn't know what it was about. Finds out on Twitter that he had been fired. Being replaced by a woman, replaced by Mike Pompeo, who was the CIA director, now is going to be the Secretary of State. I think Pompeo is an absolutely terrific choice, not the least because he is a strong, solid Christian. I was saying that this morning to Jeff, and you're aware of his past and how strong his Christian faith is. Yeah. He's been hammered for it, just like Mike Pence has, and hasn't adjusted his view to that kind of pressure. So he's a solid Christian. He's a strong guy, very firm, done a great job as head of the CIA. Now he'll be head of the Secretary of State, head of the State Department. Now, one thing is good about Mike Pompeo. This is a guy that's used to dealing with classified information. He knows the importance of protecting classified information. He's not going to pull what we saw with Susan Rice and other people that were in that position where they're unmasking the identity of Americans and all that kind of stuff. You know, Susan Rice was in the State Department. She asked for the unmasking of hundreds of Americans. She had no right to know their identities. So anyway, this is good news. I never was excited about Rex Tillerson. I mean, I'm sure Rex is a perfectly nice individual, but he's the guy that engineered the opening of the Boy Scouts to gay scoutmasters. He was the head of the Boy Scout board when that happened. When the Boy Scouts of America said, yeah, you're an adult male, and remember there's a high degree of correlation between homosexuality and pederasty, between wanting to and having sex with teenage males. There's an indisputable connection between adult homosexuals and their interest in pederasty. And so Rex Tillerson opening the floodgates in the Boy Scouts of America to that kind of abuse. Also, he's a global warmist. He believes in all of the anthropogenic global warming nonsense. So it's not a loss to American public policy to see him replaced. The woman who is replacing Pompeo at the CIA, deputy director of the CIA, is a woman. I've got her name in here. I forget what it is right off the top. But she used to work in the clandestine part of the CIA, dealing with the dark secrets. So again, you're going to have somebody heading up the CIA who is very attuned to the importance of protecting secrets. So anyway, that's good news, I believe, on that front. In fact, James Clapper used to be Director of National Intelligence. Let me see if I can find that story about Clapper, because it looks like he is going to get away with something. And again, this may be due to oversights on the part of the Department of Justice. But James Clapper, according to the Washington Examiner, will avoid charges for clearly erroneous surveillance testimony. Now, I want you to understand the significance of this, because this isn't just misleading an investigator or misleading somebody from the FBI who was talking to you. This is a guy that is misleading the United States Congress. He's giving clearly erroneous testimony by his own admission to the United States Congress. And he's going to get away with this scot-free. There's a 5-year statute of limitations on what he's done. And he admitted lying to Congress. This is back, let's see if I can find the lie that he told. This is back on March 12 of 2013. So again, March 12 of 2018, well, that's come and gone. So we're running out of time to prosecute this guy. He told Senator Ron Wyden, no, sir, and not wittingly, when he was asked about whether the NSA was collecting any type of data at all on millions of Americans. And then remember, we learned not long after that with the Snowden guy that the U.S. intelligence community had obtained secret court orders forcing phone companies to turn over millions of U.S. call records on an ongoing daily basis. And Clapper just told a bald-faced lie about that before Congress. But again, two apparent crimes on his part. Statute of limitations is going to run out. Looks like he's going to get away with it scot-free. Meanwhile, Mike Flynn, he's has to sell his house to pay for an attorney for misleading in one conversation, one investigator. You have Carter Page. You have others that have been, Paul Manafort, kind of probably go to prison for the rest of his life for lying to or misleading an investigator. And yet here is a guy who used to be Director of National Intelligence going to get away with it scot-free. Here's an important thing. We'll play the sound bites later. But the House Intelligence Committee released its findings today. They've been looking into the possible connection between Donald Trump and collusion with the Russian government since 5 days after Trump was inaugurated. They've been working on this for well over a year, conducted hundreds of interviews, hundreds of hours, thousands of documents. They released their conclusion today. There is no collusion. We found no evidence of collusion, they said, between Donald Trump and the Russians. This is a direct quote from their memo today, their letter today, we have found no evidence of collusion, coordination, or conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russians, the committee said in a one-page summary of its findings released yesterday afternoon. So no collusion. We've been saying it all along. House Intelligence Committee found none. Zero, zip, nada. And Adam Schiff didn't even contradict that. He couldn't contradict it.
We care about justice
and aren't afraid to ask hard questions.
In fact, we care about a lot of things. We have passion for truth.
We are EngageMagazine.net, an online group of millennials brought together by a common goal to share truth, apply scripture, and to get involved in our lost and hurting world. EngageMagazine.net hosts discussions that help you apply a biblical worldview to your daily life. EngageMagazine.net.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've seen God open up so many doors for us to help serve and love those who get affected by a natural disaster.
As the trees and the wind started crashing down around us, my wife was, of course, very diligently praying, Lord, please be with us.
Very simply, we do it because God commands us to love others.
I see these volunteers all as a gift from God.
And I'm just grateful they're here, helping out is a blessing.
If you're interested in becoming a part of what God's doing through 8 Days of Hope, please go to 8daysofhope.com, click on Get Involved, submit your email address.
I've noticed that whenever there's a time in my life when things might be a little gloomy, the number one thing that I can do is to go serve somebody.
And I would encourage anyone else to, it's worth it. Come out and do it next time if you didn't make it to this one, and the Father will really bless you in it.
Thank you so much for your prayers and volunteering with 8 Days of Hope.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Brian Fisher.
Welcome to the last segment of the first hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Number to call if you want to join the conversation. Chat about anything that we've been talking about in this first hour. Well, we'll just broaden it. Anything that's been in the news this past week, we'll kind of expand the parameters, kind of make it a free-for-all Tuesday here on Focal Point. Number to call is 888-589-8840. What are you doing over there, riding your horse?
He's got the music going. I just kind of got into the cowboy theme for a little bit.
Yeah, getting on his horse.
Yeah, howdy.
So, number to call is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. By the way, some people are experiencing a little bit of problem with buffering on Focal Point, the Facebook live feed. You might think about going over to the YouTube feed. Apparently, that's running flawlessly and seamlessly. Don't forget, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Focal Point YouTube channel. You can click on that little bell that's in the upper right-hand corner, and it will notify you when a new live broadcast of Focal Point is starting. You don't even have to remember. You'll get a notification, ding, 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 or whatever it is, and you'll know that another Focal Point live program is beginning on your YouTube account.
You've never gotten a notification.
What's the YouTube? What's the notification?
It doesn't go ding, ding, ding.
What does it do?
Nothing. It just shows up on the bottom.
You
of the
don't hear
page.
any sound?
No.
So the notification is just it kind of blips or something?
Yeah, it's a little window pops up.
Oh, okay. All right. So anyway, strike everything that I said about the ding, ding, ding part. But anyway, if you have problems with the live feed on Facebook, slip over to YouTube, and it's a seamless feed over there.
And a little fix, if you're stuck on and you prefer Facebook Live, just go ahead and refresh. It seems to get it started again. You may have to do that a couple times.
Okay, so we'll take your calls, 888-589-8840. Here is the head of the investigation into the collusion question. Did I give the number? It's 888-589-8840 to call in and join the conversation. 888-589-8840. Give us a call, talk about what we've talked about today, anything that's been in the news this week, the last couple of days. And again, here is the head of the actual investigation. Now, Devin Nunes is the head of this committee. He's the chairman of the committee. But Mike Conaway, Republican from Texas, is the guy that actually ran the Russian investigation. And here's what he says about their findings, clip number 3.
Well, the headlines are that we've reached that point where we've interviewed all the folks we need to. We've looked at some 300,000 documents, 73 interviews that we've done across the course of this thing, trying to answer the 4 questions that were originally set out for a committee to answer. Yes, the Russians tried to interfere with our election process. Yes, they had cyber attacks, active measures going on. We could find no evidence of collusion between either campaign and the Russians. With respect to answering these 4 questions, we believe we've got the information necessary to answer those for the American people.
Okay, 300,000 documents, 73 interviews. I think earlier I said hundreds of them, 73. 300,000 documents and hundreds of hours, I know, that they met investigating this thing. The quote from the guy that headed this up, "We find no evidence of collusion between either campaign and the Russians." You can stick a fork in that thing. It is done. Which is, and see, Robert Mueller knows this. That's why he's fishing around for obstruction of justice. He's kind of coming up with fancy new charges to try to drag more people into the mud bog. You know, Andy McCarthy's got a good piece up today saying we don't need a new special counsel to probe this FISA misconduct. We just need somebody from the Department of Justice to be sent after this issue. And he says, look, the original problem in this whole investigation was the appointment of Robert Mueller in the first place. That's where Rod Rosenstein made his big mistake. It was a mistake to appoint a special prosecutor. Why? Because there was no known crime. The law, ladies and gentlemen, the law says that in order to appoint a special counsel, you have to have a conflict of interest that is so severe that the Department of Justice cannot conduct the investigation in an appropriate manner. And secondly, it's necessary to appoint from the outside the DOJ, a quasi-independent prosecutor. This prosecutor, listen to this, is to be given a grant of investigative jurisdiction, listen to this carefully, limited jurisdiction, limited to the crimes that the Justice Department is too conflicted to investigate, and no other crimes. Let me repeat that. Jurisdiction of the special prosecutor limited to crimes that the Justice Department is too conflicted to investigate, and no other crimes, unless the special counsel explicitly requests and the Justice Department grants an expansion of jurisdiction. So there never should have been this investigation to begin with, because there was no known crime that was specified that the special counsel, Bob Mueller, was supposed to investigate. That's why he needs 17 highly priced attorneys and investigators, because they got to come up with something here. They have no crime to investigate. They got to discover some. 888-589-8840 is the number. 888-589-8840.
I'm just laughing because you came up with more information than they did with just 3 people on your team.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you came up with more information than in how long did they have that special counsel going for?
Well, still going. It's been going. I don't know, when did it start?
14 months is what he said.
Okay. Well, it's a long time.
Long time.
Could have saved a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Brian in Largo, Florida. Expect a brilliant observation from a man carrying this name. Brian, make me look good. What's on your mind?
Yeah, sorry, Brian. I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate your show.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. I went online and I signed a petition not to let that woman appoint to that position.
Yes, thank you.
Because it's important. It's important that we Americans, start getting a hold of these kind of things and not letting that happen. Because, pretty soon you're going to get some wingnut out there that's going to say, "Hey, I'm a sheep in a man's body, so I got to have a relationship with a sheep." That's going to really start snowballing. So, I don't know if these people think, we got to, like you're a mannequin or what. I don't know. But we got to, like I say, put a halt to this. We got to fight back on this because, our country's born and set on morality, and they're just looking to destroy it. So I really appreciate you and your show and getting petitions like this signed. We got to really put a stop to this stuff.
Okay, good, Brian. Well, thank you for signing that petition. Ladies and gentlemen, the petition that Brian is talking about is a petition that the AFA is encouraging you to sign that will be sent to Donald Trump, urging him to withdraw the nomination of Kai Feldblum to the EEOC. That's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. She's a radical lesbian activist. She's said numerous times that if there's a conflict between religious liberty and the homosexual agenda, she sees no circumstances under which religious liberty would be preferred. So for her, the rights of sexually deviant people supersedes every other right that's found in the Constitution. So sign the petition. You can go to afa.net, sign it on our website. You can go to our Facebook page and click on the link. We got it right there on the front page of the Facebook page. All right, let's go to James in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. James, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey. Well, I was just telling your screener, I feel like that, excuse me, if Hillary had been elected and the vice president had made a comment like, well, I'm channeling Che Guevara, nobody in the leftist media would have a problem with that. But, you know, you say you're praying to God of the Bible, oh, yeah, you're a wacko. And these are the same people that want to have sanity tests for gun ownership. You know, well, if you're a Christian, you're obviously too crazy to have a gun.
Yeah. Well, you know, and the other thing, James, these are the people that want to write the tests for mental illness. They want to write the parameters that enable us to identify the people that shouldn't have guns. You know, and, you know, remember back in Barack Obama's day, you had vets coming back from Iraq, and Barack Obama said, these people can't be trusted with guns. They're all coming back with PTSD. They are just, they're just loaded rocket-propelled grenades just getting ready to go off. They can't be trusted with guns. All right, thank you, James. You know, and it's interesting, too, thinking about another parallel. You know, imagine, just for the sake of argument, if somebody had gone on television and said something that I've expressed before, but they'd gone on television, on a national television, on a show like The View, and they said, you know, if people think that Allah speaks to them, if people think that Muhammad is the prophet of God, that's a form of mental illness to believe that. Can you imagine what would happen? I mean, tons of debris would fall on that person, wouldn't get out of that studio with a job. I can guarantee you that for a fact. But you can insult Christians all day long, and there's not a peep from the people on the left. All right, Robin in Hickory, North Carolina. Robin, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian. I've been so discouraged about this special counsel, because just like you said, the whole thing is just a ruse. But I don't understand. I'm not sure if they're doing it just to blow a lot of money. I don't think that's it. But I wish the American people knew exactly how many multi-millions they have blown on this ridiculous special counsel. And I really think there's no crime. So, and I thought all along they were going to drag this out until the fall of 2018, and they're going to do some kind of October surprise to try to mess up the midterms. And he's just fishing for this obstruction of justice or whatever he's looking for, so that if the Democrats were to take the House, then they say, oh, see right there, he's been obstructing justice and he needs to be impeached.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Robin, there's another thing that Mueller is doing that not a lot of people know about, but he is likely going to delay his investigation into Donald Trump on this obstruction of justice charge, because he doesn't have anything more to do on that. There's no more investigation to do. They know everything they need to know. There's no obstruction of justice, and he ought to issue that formal finding. But he doesn't want to, because he's afraid it will cause the air to go out of the balloon of this investigation, and he wants it to last until the election. He wants this special investigation to create problems for Trump and the Republicans in 2018, so he doesn't want to finish this thing up. And he's afraid that people, if he says, hey, we didn't find anything on Trump on the obstruction of justice, people will just stop wanting to talk to him. They won't show up for testimony, and people will just not pay any attention to him any longer. It'll be a boring thing, because he's out to get Trump, and he's going to wait. He's going to investigate everybody else first and say whatever he can find on Trump for, like the caller said, for that October surprise in the fall of 2018. Focal Point American Family Radio, that's it for the first hour. We'll be right back with hour number 2. Stick around.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The sexual revolution is falsely promised to satisfy the human heart.
God has a better way. If we follow God's prescription.
Dr. Michael Brown offers hope for those trapped in the downward spiral of sexual immorality. The Freedom of Sexual Purity is a powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute. Get your copy today at afastore.net.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groening. Another member of the Trump administration is fired. Fox's John Decker reports from the White House.
After serving as Secretary of State for 13 months, Rex Tillerson has been asked to step down. His replacement, CIA Director Mike Pompeo. President Trump thanked Tillerson for his service, but told reporters before getting on Marine One that he and Tillerson were sometimes not on the same page.
We disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess he thought it was okay. I wanted to either break it or do something, and he felt a little bit differently.
Tillerson was on an official tour of Africa last week when he was apparently surprised by the president's announcement that he would hold talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
There was no collusion between Donald Trump's presidential campaign and Russia. That's the initial finding of Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee. Trump used all capital letters to tweet his approval of the report's finding. Devin Nunes, the head of the House Intelligence Committee, weighs in.
We did find clear links between the Russians and the Hillary Clinton campaign, which nobody seems to care about.
Special Counsel Robert Mueller, meanwhile, is expanding his inquiry and pursuing criminal charges against at least 4 Trump associates. President Trump is further addressing the U.S. pledge of solidarity with the UK after an announcement by Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May that evidence linked Russia with a nerve agent attack on UK soil. Before boarding Marine One on Tuesday, President Trump said he would be speaking with May and looking over evidence before calling out the Kremlin.
As soon as we get the facts straight, and we're going to be speaking with the British today, we're speaking with Theresa May today, and as soon as we get the facts straight, if we agree with them, we will condemn Russia or whoever it may be. But I have not spoken to her. I'll speak to her sometime today.
May announced on Monday that there was credible evidence linking Moscow to the poisoning of former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter. The pair remains in critical but stable condition. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis arrived in Kabul today, telling reporters victory in Afghanistan is still possible, though not necessarily on the battlefield, but by making peace with the Taliban through reconciliation with the Afghan government. Fox's Lucas Tomlinson has more from the Pentagon.
17 years into the war in Afghanistan, Defense Secretary Mattis still travels to Kabul in secret. Reporters unable to report the trip until safely away from the flight line. In September, the Taliban fired over 40 rockets at the air base an hour after Mattis landed. Recent attacks in Kabul have killed hundreds of civilians. The U.S.-backed Afghan government only controls roughly 60% of the country.
We do look toward a victory in Afghanistan.
Mattis told reporters on the flight to Afghanistan. The secretary says victory over the Taliban will not be a military one, but a political settlement with the Afghan government. At the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
A Pennsylvania-based conservative activist and political analyst does not believe a Democratic victory in today's special congressional race in Pennsylvania would be a bellwether for Democratic victories in the fall. Democrat Connor Lamb and Republican Rick Saccone are vying for the seat once occupied by disgraced Republican Tim Murphy, who was forced to resign after admitting having an extramarital affair. Colin Hanna of Let Freedom Ring says Lamb is not your typical Democrat.
Whether he is a prototype candidate for other potential Democrat challengers, I don't know. I rather doubt it. Connor Lamb happens to be a Democrat who is a Marine, a lawyer, pro-life, and specifically said he would not vote for Nancy Pelosi as House Leader if the Democrats were to win the majority, for her to be Speaker. Those 4 items you're not going to find in almost any other candidate. So this notion that somehow this is a true bellwether race for the rest of 2018, I think is a bit off track. The Democrat candidate is not in any sense a typical Democrat candidate.
Hanna says recent polling has moved the election in Lamb's favor. And that is American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groening.
scroll is the title deed to this earth. And through the tribulation that is going to take place on this earth, Jesus Christ is going to once again gain control of the earth that belongs to him.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Does America deserve Donald Trump?
Well, I would have to say no, we did not deserve that. You know, I'm the mother who says, eat your spinach. Maybe I should have given them more entertainment.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead? Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
I was on the way to winning.
We could find no evidence of collusion.
I'm going to keep saying that we need to impeach him.
Joy Behar has personally called Mike Pence to apologize for our outrageous crack she had said on The View.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you.
Exactly.
That's called mental illness.
Mental illness.
My Christian faith is probably the most important thing in my life. I just couldn't be silent.
Joy, you're a television person. You said it on the air. You're going to apologize on the air as well.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of today's edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Program is Focal Point. Glad to have you in the conversation. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on electorally. There's an election tonight, a special election for the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania's District 18, which is a district, by the way, that's virtually going to get wiped out when they do the redistricting map. This is a redistricting map that was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said you got to get rid of the current congressional districting map. Now, every 10 years, state legislatures are responsible to divide up their state in congressional districts. Each one of those districts gets one representative in the House of Representatives. The Republicans redesigned the map in 2010. And, of course, that's designed to give you an opportunity to adjust to changes in population density and all that kind of stuff. Well, the Democrats didn't like the map, so they went to the Supreme Court, and they got the Supreme Court to throw that one out, and then they got the Supreme Court to replace it with a map that was drawn up by Democrats. So now the congressional map in the state of Pennsylvania is a Democrat congressional map. But the race tonight, and so that district, Pennsylvania's 18, is going to pretty much be wiped out when the new map goes into effect. The Republican there, Rick Saccone, is in a battle for his life. Connor Lamb is the guy that is challenging him. It looks like it's going to be right down to the wire. Now, here's our friend Maxine Waters, clip number 2, Mad Maxine. And remember, she's the one that started beating the impeachment drum, I don't know, way back during Trump's first year, maybe the summer of his first year. Well, this is what's getting her on national TV, so she's not about to give up this act. It's like, I don't know, like you can keep plates spinning on poles, and that's your ticket to getting on the TV show, so you just keep doing it. That's what Maxine is doing. She's a one-trick pony. This is the only club in her bag, but she's determined. She's fixated on it. And the interesting thing about her is what she is just verbalizing what every Democrat wants. This is what Bob Mueller's trying to do. He's trying to give the Congress, the Senate, grounds for impeachment. He's trying to find something that he can hang around Donald Trump's neck that will get him impeached, convicted, and removed from office. So the whole left, their agenda isn't just to defeat Donald Trump's agenda. Their objective is to remove him from the Oval Office. So here is Maxine Waters staying right on message.
If he thinks he can stop me from talking about impeach 45, he's got another thought coming. I am not intimidated by him. I'm going to keep saying that we need to impeach him, and I am so depending on our special counsel, Robert Mueller, to connect the dots so that he can prove the collusion. And of course, we've seen obstruction of justice just playing out before our very eyes. So this is a dishonorable human being. He is a con man. He came to this job as a con man. I really call him, Don the con man. And so that's who he is.
All right, so Mad Maxine, nobody's going to stop me from talking about impeaching 45. That's the number that Donald Trump is in the presidential line. Let's grab clip number 4, get that ready to go. Got a couple of stories on the media and the media bias. Media bias exemplified by the fact that they give Maxine Waters so much time, because that's what the mainstream media wants as well. But here are examples of how the media is completely compromised on this. Devin Nunes pointing out that the Drudge Report is being censored by Twitter. He has examples of a number of tweets that were sent out by the Drudge Report, and they're blocked with this notation: this tweet is not available because it includes potentially sensitive content. So they're using that for one story that Drudge Report posts after another. So Twitter, quite directly and obviously, censoring Drudge. I don't know how many people. I mean, it's a little difficult to know. You might have a Facebook page, you might have a Twitter feed. I've had weird things happen with my Facebook page. Engagement levels seem to go up and they seem to go down. Same thing with Twitter. I think Facebook is messing with all conservatives, and if they can impede their Twitter feeds, they can impede their Facebook accounts, they will do it. Now, this is interesting. This is a New York Times editor. You'd figure somebody like this would be a pretty mature, composed individual. We're talking here about the former executive editor of the New York Times. Her name is Jill Abrahamson. She wrote a column for The Guardian over there in the UK, and she said, look, I am still struggling to cope with President Donald Trump's election victory. You know how she copes with the stress from having Donald Trump in office? She keeps a little plastic Obama doll in her purse, and she pulls it out whenever the stress gets too much. She says, this is why I carry a little plastic Obama doll in my purse. I pull him out every now and then to remind myself that the United States had a progressive African-American president until very recently. Some people find this strange, but you have to take comfort where you can find it in Donald Trump's America. It reminds me of the firemen. They have the little stuffed animals for children. Yeah, they go to a fire, and the poor kids, lost their house, so they had to sleep out of the house, and their bedroom burned up, and they have a little stuffed animal to kind of comfort them. So her little stuffed animal is a Trump doll. You might have heard about this. This is another example of how the media twists these things. That there was a scandal because Ronald Zinke, who was the chairman of the Department of the Interior, was spending $139,000 on Interior Department doors. And everybody thought this was a scandal. This is a guy that just wants to play with other people's money. He's got delusions of grandeur. Well, it turns out that Ryan Zinke had nothing to do with the cost of these doors. This is on westernjournal.com, but you're not going to read this anywhere in the Talking Snake media because they want to keep you thinking that Ryan Zinke has just got a big head and wants to spend your tax dollars and waste it on doors. The high price, according to Western journalism, is due largely to federal regulations governing the procurement process and historic landmark preservation. This project was requested by career facilities and security officials at Interior as part of the decade-long modernization of the historic FDR-era building. The secretary was not aware of this contract, but agrees that it is a lot of money for demo, install, materials, and labor. But he has nothing to say. He has no say in this matter because it's government regulations that are governing the cost. This is a historic building. It has to be restored according to very specific specifications that are very, very costly. They had doors that were installed that just were not getting the job, so they had to be torn out and replaced. It added up to $139,000 Ryan Zinke had absolutely zero, nada, zip to do with that. But good luck finding out about that in the mainstream media. Now, let me give you an example. Clip number 4. This is Casey Hunt on MSNBC talking with former White House Communications Chief Anthony Scaramucci. Catch this little exchange. Only takes 10 seconds.
When you're the victim of fake news, and when someone's writing...
We don't use the term fake news on this show.
Okay, well, however you want to say it. Inaccurate news, let's say inaccurate news.
So we don't use the term fake news. Like they think if we don't use the term, it'll go away.
Just don't say it.
Yeah. So, we'll be right back. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Stay with us.
You shall not murder. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. This is the 6th commandment of the 10 commandments. You shall not murder. We are asking schools all over America to put this on their marquees, put this on their signs out in front of their school for 1 week to remind America's students that innocent life is precious. Help us spread the word about this campaign to your friends and family. Please go to our website, afa.net, and sign our open letter to America's schools. We need to proclaim this message, you shall not murder, across the land. Why? Because gun control alone will not solve matters of the heart. We need our young people to understand that murder is a violation of God's law, and also it's a violation of the laws all across this land. So help us. Go to afa.net and spread the word.
Oops, there's a piece I missed a little bit.
Grandpa, why do we always pick up litter when we go hiking?
Well, we're just making it nicer for people who come after us a little bit. It's called stewardship.
My grandfather taught me that you should always leave a place better than you found it. That it's important to invest in the lives of your children and grandchildren, leaving them with a godly legacy they can build on. That's why I decided to set up a charitable gift annuity with the AFA Foundation.
It's called stewardship.
I know that my gift will support a ministry that honors the biblical principles I hold dear, and it's a way to invest in the future of our country. The AFA Foundation also arranged for me to have a steady fixed income, so I don't have to worry in the midst of changing times.
Call the AFA Foundation today to find out how you can set up a charitable gift annuity. Just call 800-326-4543, extension 345.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point Network, the American Family Radio Network. You know, I pulled out this editorial that we talked about yesterday by a writer for the Washington Post. Ruth Marcus is her name. And she said, look, women have to have the right to abort a fetus, which is just a Latin word for baby. So if we translate that, she says a woman needs to have the right to abort a baby who has Down syndrome. She said, I would have done that. I had 2 kids. If either one of them had been diagnosed with Down syndrome, I would have aborted them both if that was what was necessary. And she said this, I'm going to be blunt here. That was not the child I wanted. That was not the choice I would have made. You can call me selfish or worse, but I am in good company. The evidence is clear that most women confronted with the same unhappy alternative would make the same decision. You know, well, ultimately, the child you get is not a matter of the child that you want. It's a matter of the child that God gives to you. That's part of what it means to be a man or woman of faith, is when you conceive a child and you're waiting for that child to be born, you're trusting God with the whole process, believing that he has the child that he wants you to have, with whatever condition. It might be perfectly healthy. It might have some kind of congenital defect, but you are trusting God to give you the child that for whatever reason is right for you, right for your family, and your family is right for that child as an environment in which that child can grow up. And she says this in another paragraph, if you believe that abortion is equivalent to murder, which of course we do, it's a human life, the taking of a human life, then of course you would make a different choice. But that is not my belief, and the Supreme Court has affirmed my freedom to have that belief and act accordingly. So where is she placing her her confidence that she's doing something that's appropriate in the wisdom of the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court is not the body that decides the issue of human life. It's not the Supreme Court that decides whether it's a human life. It's God that decides that. So she's looking in the wrong place and placing the authority of the Supreme Court over the authority of God himself. Bad days in the Republican Party. The Guardian, we just talked about them. They ran a column by Walter Shapiro today telling the Democrats it's time for them to ditch Nancy Pelosi. They said, if you're running as a Democrat in Donald Trump country, the name Nancy Pelosi is even more toxic than the letters CNN. Now, there's this election tonight in Pennsylvania. The Democrat that's running is a guy by the name of Connor Lamb. And here's what he said. My opponent, he's a Democrat running against this Rick Saccone guy. My opponent wants you to believe that the biggest issue in this campaign is Nancy Pelosi. It's all a big lie. I've already said I don't support Nancy Pelosi. So even people in her own party in contested elections are running against her. They're trying to get as far away from Nancy Pelosi as they possibly can. Donald Trump, by the way, down in Southern California looking at the prototypes of the border wall, and I've got a story in the stack here about Mexicans saying, look, we'll just climb that thing. And I remember back in the day when they were talking about putting a wall up there, somebody said, well, you build a 15-foot wall, they'll just get a 16-foot ladder. Well, these walls are 30 feet high, and they've had SWAT teams and tactical teams trying to scale those walls, and they cannot do it. One prototype, there was only one guy that was able, and these are like Delta teams, like Navy SEAL teams. Only one guy could get to the top of the wall, and he couldn't get down. They had to go get one of those cherry pickers, lift the basket up there to get that guy down off the wall. So these walls, they're going to be effective. They are going to work if they can get them built. There's still this business about Mexico paying for it. I've seen some calculations that if they just shut the border to illegal immigration, illegal aliens coming in, they would save enough on welfare benefits to pay for the wall. Because every illegal alien that does not come across the border is not an illegal alien that's going to be consuming food stamps, going to be consuming educational resources, not going to be consuming emergency room services and all that kind of a thing. Now, here's just a note heading into the 2018 elections. The enthusiasm right now, according to this poll, is with the Democrats. This is George Washington University Battleground poll. Among those who are extremely likely to vote, Democrats hold the edge 51% to 39%. So, again, that's a moving target that can change rapidly. But, when people are asked about their own representative, 50% approve and only 37% disapprove. So these totals about what do you think about Congress really don't mean very much. The issue is what do you think about your own congressman? And most people are pretty satisfied with the one that they've got. We talk all the time about the difference between conservative governance and liberal governance. And, it's like a lot of things. The proof is in the pudding. Proof is in the pudding. By the way, you know how much attention the networks gave to the findings of the House Intelligence Committee that there were no collusion findings? CBS Evening News gave 31 seconds to it. Remember, this is a pretty big deal because they're saying no after a year of investigation, 300,000 documents, 73 interviews, hundreds of hours of committee hearings. They found absolutely no collusion, no coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. That's a pretty big deal. CBS News gave it 31 seconds. Why? Because it is a finding that is good for Donald Trump. It goes against their narrative that Donald Trump is the source of all evil in the Western world. So CBS News gave it 31 seconds. ABC gave it 27 seconds, which means the three major outlets, CBS, ABC, NBC, gave a grand total of 58 seconds, less than 1 minute, to this story. And NBC Nightly News did not cover it at all. But here's what else they covered on their nightly program. They had time to whine about President Trump's school safety plan because they didn't have enough stuff in it about gun control. They had a story on a Powerball winner and they had a story about Warren Buffett's $1 million March Madness bracket challenge. So that's what NBC News was all about. Exonerating President Trump? Nah, not interested in that story whatsoever.
They gave a My Pillow commercial more time than in this announcement.
Yeah,
something
right.
that they've probably given how many hours and days worth of time over the last year or so.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of the proof is in the pudding, seeing the difference in when you have a jurisdiction that has been governed by Democrats for decades, you can get an idea of how effective Democrat leadership is and Democrat policies are. Do you know the United States has 5 of the most violent cities in the entire world? 5 of them, of the most violent cities in all of the world, are found in the United States of America. This is based on statistics of homicides per 100,000 residents. Number 13 on the list is St. Louis, the 13th most violent city in the world. Number 21 is Baltimore. Number 32 is San Juan, Puerto Rico. Number 41 is New Orleans, and number 42 is Detroit. Now, what do all of those cities have in common? St. Louis, Baltimore, San Juan, Puerto Rico, New Orleans, and Detroit. I don't know about San Juan for sure, but all of those other cities have been run by Democrats, I mean mayor, city council, for absolutely 4 decades. And they all have strict gun policies, in effect, and yet they're among the 5 most dangerous cities in all of the world. Now, here's another story from Orange County. I don't know, you might have seen stories about this, cleaning up these homeless camps along the Santa Ana River there, tent villages all over the place. They did a tally of all the stuff they had to clean out of this one camp. This is in Orange County, California. The Orange County Register published the final tally on what was collected at this site, this homeless encampment on the Santa Ana River, right along a bike path, by the way. So they collected stuff between January 22 and March 3rd. That's when they started cracking down on the homeless camp, and it took them until March 3rd. What is that, about 6 weeks before they cleaned all the stuff up. They cleaned out of there 404 tons of debris. They cleared out 13,950 hypodermic needles. 14,000 hypodermic needles in this homeless camp. You want to know why they're homeless? Well, that may be part of the explanation right there. And they cleared out 5,300 pounds, 5,279 pounds of hazardous human waste. So that's, and that's, again, Orange County been under Democrat governance, Santa Ana River, for a long time there in the Los Angeles area. Here's another story from the Washington Free Beacon. We've talked about this before. But remember, Obama said, we didn't have any scandals that embarrassed me. That's an interesting way to put it. You know, because that's different than saying we didn't have any scandals. He was saying we didn't have any scandals that embarrassed us.
Because they have no shame.
We have no shame. That's what he's saying. Because, listen, this is the list of the scandals that the Free Beacon collects in one story. Remember, the IRS went after his political opponents. That was a scandal. Remember that his Justice Department lost track of guns it was running into Mexico that were used to kill a U.S. Border Patrol agent. That's scandal number 2. Scandal number 3, remember that solar panel boondoggle with Solyndra, $535 million that we're on the hook for. That's scandal number 3. Let's see, thousands of veterans died waiting for care at a VA hospital. That's scandal number 4. Your national security advisor went out on all 5 Sunday morning shows and tried to blame Benghazi on a internet video. That was a total scam and a lie. You exchanged 5 Guantanamo Bay detainees for a deserter, Bo Bergdahl. And furthermore, you said that he served with honor and distinction. And then you had detainees in Gitmo that you let go, and they returned to the battlefield. You allowed Iran to hold 10 U.S. sailors at gunpoint, and then you thanked them when they let them go. You sent billions in secret payments to Iran in pursuit of a nuclear deal. That's now being used to fund terrorism in the Middle East, and that cash is now being traced to Iran-backed terrorists. You let Hezbollah off the hook for the nuclear deal, and you let Bashar al-Assad cross your vaunted red line in Syria He was using chemical weapons on his own people. You said, I've set a red line. Chemical weapons, that's it. You use chemical weapons, I'm coming after you. Bashar al-Assad did nothing from Obama. And then you use taxpayer funding to meddle in the election of an ally. Remember, he tried to tip the election in Israel away from Benjamin Netanyahu. So all of those were scandals, all of them bona fide scandals, but apparently none of them embarrassed Barack Obama, according to words that have come out of his own mouth. All right, we'll be right back with more after this. The New York Times feature article yesterday, the economy is looking awfully strong. They just cannot get around the fact that Donald Trump's economy is humming along. We'll be right back.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
Here on American Family Radio, this is David Wolin with Haven Ministries, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. The events happened back to back. First, the disciples watched Jesus miraculously feed 5,000 people, and then Jesus put them into a boat and sent them across the sea into a storm. The wind was against them. Jesus was still on shore, and he saw that they were making their way painfully, and he came to them walking on the water. And they were terrified when they saw him, until he stepped into the boat, and the sea became calm. It says they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. Interesting, isn't it? What did the loaves have to do with the storm? Well, in both cases, only God could do a miracle like that. Get started with the print edition of Anchor Devotional. Just visit getanchor.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Glad to have the conversation. This segment is going to be devoted to Hillary Clinton. And I just want to make a promise to you. This is going to be the last time I'm going to ask you to listen to this woman. But I thought it was worth playing these sound bites, some from a conference in India in Mumbai. And then there's another one, I think, where she was talking to somebody else. But very revealing about Hillary Clinton in kind of the wake of her defeat in 2016. By the way, there's a supermarket chain in the UK that has developed a gender-neutral Mother's Day card. It just says Happy You Day.
Oh, no.
And let's see.
What kind of, I mean.
Happy You Day, whatever you happen to be. One of the cards says 2 moms are better than 1. Oh. And here's a card, Dad, thanks for being the most amazing mom, or most amazing mom card. Yikes. Yeah. So the goal of the left, remember, is just to destroy the nuclear family. You know, back to this story in the New York Times about the Trump economy. They don't give him credit for it here. I didn't read the whole article. I don't even know if Trump's name is in this thing. But this is the New York Times. The economy is looking awfully strong. There are 39 pages in the Labor Department's February report on the employment situation in the United States, but they can be summed up in 4 words. The economy is humming. The 313,000 jobs that the nation added in February are far more than are needed to keep up with population growth and continue a surprising burst of job creation to start the year. In the first 2 months of 2018, the economy has added an average of 276,000 jobs a month, a big step up from the 182,000 average in 2017, which, is going to make the hill pretty steep, I think, for the Democrats to climb in December. One issue that the Democrats have been trying to dodge is their connection with Louis Farrakhan, who is he's just a blatant racist. He's an anti-Semite, and he is an anti-white guy, and openly so, blatantly so. So he's a racist in two different dimensions. And the Democrats are all trying to avoid questions about whether they've hung out with him. There are at least 8 Democrats that are known to have met with Farrakhan, but they're all either dodging it or they are lying about it. One of them is Keith Ellison, who is a congressman from Minnesota. He's denied having a close relationship with Louis Farrakhan. The Washington Post looked into it, and they gave him 4 Pinocchios for that thing. 4 Pinocchios. That means liar, liar, pants on fire is what that means for Keith Ellison. So he's hobnobbed, and remember, they buried that picture of Barack Obama with Louis Farrakhan for 13 years. It was taken in 2005. That was kept in somebody's shoebox until 2018. You might have heard about an interview between 60 Minutes and Stormy Daniels. She's the porn actress that supposedly had an affair with Donald Trump in 2006, was paid $130,000 in hush money not to talk about it. Well, 60 Minutes has done an interview with her, but they're having a tough time deciding when to run it. They can't promise when it's going to run, and part of the reason is the Washington Post is doing a lengthy expose of the sexual environment at CBS. All the hanky-panky that's going on, all of the sexual harassment, all of the sexual activity that's going on at CBS. So they're getting ready to run this expose on Donald Trump when the Washington Post is getting ready to run an expose on them. Wow. So they got to decide what they're going to do about that. One other interesting thing, again, this has to do with media bias, but CNN used to have a job tracker on their website. So it gave you, and I gave you a running count of the jobs being created in America. The last time this tracker was updated was January 5th, when the economy had added only 1,839,000 jobs since Trump took office. On that pace, he would have fallen short of his pledge to create 25 million jobs in 10 years. But they stopped counting when the job market started to crank up. Federal economists estimated that employers added 200,000 jobs in January, and Friday's job report showed 300,000 jobs added, which would be more than enough to be on a healthy pace to average the 208,333 jobs per month that Donald Trump promised, but you'd never know it by going to CNN. All right, let's play some Hillary Clinton clips. Yeah. If you ever, I don't know, maybe you got earplugs you use, you got a spouse that snores, and you plug them in, this might be a time to go grab them. She is in Mumbai here, and she is asked this question by Arun Puri, who is her interviewer. Did the nation deserve Donald Trump? Here's what she said.
It's commonly said that countries deserve the governments they get. Does America deserve Donald Trump? What's gone wrong?
Well, I would have to say no, we did not deserve that. But I think, as I mentioned, he ran the first reality TV campaign, and he was the first reality TV candidate. And what does that mean? Well, if you watch reality TV, it means that the person who is the most outrageous, the person who says the politically incorrect things, the person who's insulting and attacking, drives big ratings. And I think part of what happened in the election is almost an attraction that many people had to the role that was being played by him as a candidate for president.
So Hillary Clinton saying, look, Donald Trump won because he was a much better reality TV contestant than I am. much more interesting, much funnier, much more complex than I am. That's what she's saying there. Now, you know, she said, he asked the question, did we deserve that? She says, no, we did not deserve that. Well, maybe we didn't, but Madam Clinton, we chose that. We may not deserve it, but that's what we chose. That's what the American people chose. And that's what she cannot come to grips with, is the fact that the American people chose her opponent. Now, here is Hillary Clinton talking again about this reality TV campaign, and we find out here what she thinks. Well, listen to her question, her campaign strategy here.
You know, if people were looking for the reality TV campaign, maybe I should have given them more entertainment. I'm the mother who says, eat your spinach, you'll grow up strong. And somebody else is saying, eat all the fast food and the ice cream you can possibly stick in your mouth. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, wait a minute, maybe I'm running a campaign that is like all the other campaigns I've ever been a part of, and he's doing something entirely different, which is this reality TV campaign.
You know, I think a couple of things here. Maybe I should have given them more entertainment. I'm trying to picture Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I don't mean this to be mean, but I'm trying to picture her being entertaining. And I just can't get there. And whatever else Donald Trump is, he was very entertaining. You know, and so Hillary Clinton is saying, you know, in retrospect, I should have tried to feed the American people more spinach. You know, that is her assessment of her campaign. I just didn't try to force enough spinach down the gullets of the American people. Now, clip number 7 here. Listen to Hillary Clinton's assessment of ordinary voters like you and me. Clip 7.
If you look at the map of the United States, there's all that red in the middle where Trump won. I win the coasts, I win, Illinois and Minnesota, places like that. But what the map doesn't show you is that I won the places that represent 2/3 of America's gross domestic product. So I won the places that are optimistic, diverse, dynamic, moving forward, and his whole campaign, Make America Great Again, was looking backwards. You know, you didn't like black people getting rights, you don't like women, getting jobs, you don't want to, see that Indian American succeeding more than you are. Whatever your problem is, I'm going to solve it.
So that's what Hillary Clinton thinks of you and me, the people that live in red America in the middle. And she says, look, I won in the places where all the cool kids are.
Yeah.
I won in the places where all the rich people live. I won in the places that are optimistic, that are diverse, that are dynamic, that are moving forward. Donald Trump won in the places that are pessimistic. I mean, this is her assessment. Pessimistic. Did you see any pessimism at a Donald Trump rally?
No.
Ever? One single time? What you saw was enthusiasm. What you saw was excitement. What you saw was passion. What you saw was energy. Nothing pessimistic about the Donald Trump campaign, Donald Trump rallies. Diverse. I mean, you look at the Donald Trump campaign, there are people of all races and all colors and all creeds at his campaign events.
Yeah.
Dynamic. She says, I won the country. I won in the places that were dynamic. And so she's assessing red America as just dull, nothing going on, nothing happening, no energy. But you look at the Trump campaign, the people that gathered, there was a lot of energy in those campaign events, those parts of the country. I won in the places that are moving forward. The implication is that you and I, we're moving backwards. We're heading back toward the 19th century. We're a bunch of Neanderthals that want to climb into the caves. So really, she's saying, look, Donald Trump won in all the place where the Yahoo rednecks live. Mm-hmm. I won in the place where all the sophisticated people live.
Did you notice that she said that Donald Trump didn't want black people to have jobs, women to have jobs? I can't think of one time that he said anything about blacks not getting jobs. And I can only think of one woman that he didn't want to give a job, have a job, and that would be Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's right, Hillary. He didn't want certain women to have one job, didn't want you to have his job. But and you think about, I mean, he just appointed a woman to be the director of the CIA. And this whole idea that Donald Trump is racist, I find that to be completely unproven. You know, and my theory is that if you find racism where it does not exist, you see racism where it does not exist, then you are the racist. Because that racist sentiment, that racist tendency is rolling around in your brain. And you're projecting it on people that aren't racist in the least. All right, we'll come back with your phone calls, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Donald Trump down looking at the prototypes of the border wall. Love to know what you think about all that and all the other stuff we've talked about today, 888-589-8840. I do have one more Hillary Clinton soundbite after the break, and I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, that will be the last one that I force you to hear. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Dan Celia from Financial Issues. We as God's people need to be good stewards of all that He has given us. That is so important, and that's what drives me each day as I break down the latest financial numbers and talk to listeners across the country about their use of the money that God has entrusted to them. Join me each morning from 8 to 10 Central and Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock Central Time for Financial Issues right here on American Family Radio.
Some 2,000 years ago, the followers of the crucified Christ learned that He had risen from the grave. They quickly spread the word that Jesus was alive. It's good news that spread from one generation to the next, and now it's our turn. One way to tell this extraordinary news to others is by simply wearing and sharing our colorful He Lives Easter buttons. Get your pack of 10 today at afastore.net.
Today, moral relativism and political correctness are assaulting truth. How can the world have hope when believers themselves aren't clear on the authority of the Bible?
The Church of Jesus Christ always faces a tremendous temptation to deviate from the Word of God.
The God who speaks clearly expresses God's intent in giving us His Word, and the response that is demanded of those who hear.
Nobody ever encounters God and says, that was boring and irrelevant. When people say that about the Bible, it just says to me they've not encountered the God of the Bible.
Our faith is rooted in history, and consequently we need to use the evidence and never be afraid of it.
The God Who Speaks is a feature-length documentary from the American Family Association, which could bolster your confidence in the Word of God.
Churches really need to see this, really need to understand what the Bible actually is.
Available now at thegodwhospeaks.org.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point, Brian Fisher.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Time for your calls, 888-589-8840.
Jeff's late. Slacking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, nobody pointing at me?
Yeah, I missed it.
I nearly missed my cue because I only had one person telling me what to do here. 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. I apologize for one thing. We had somebody note on YouTube reminded us that we used to have a trigger warning before we played Hillary Clinton sound bites. We had the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
This was it's a standard scream that they've used in Hollywood movies for 30 years. Some guy named Wilhelm did this scream, and it was such a good scream they recorded it and kept it and used it for posterity. So my apologies for not giving you that primal trigger warning scream. Here's the last one. This is Hillary Clinton, and again, I want the women in our listening audience. I want you to listen carefully to this soundbite, and then I want you to go ask your husbands to tell you what you should think about it. Let's listen.
And a sort of ongoing pressure to vote the way that your husband, your boss, your son, whoever believes you should. And what happened in my election is I was on the way to winning white women until former director of the FBI, Jim Comey, dropped that very ill-advised letter on October the 28th, and my numbers just went down.
So that's Hillary Clinton. You know, and ladies and gentlemen, what she's saying here is the reason that I lost, the reason that they're white, that white women did not vote for me is that their husbands told them who to vote for. In other words, her view of conservative women, conservative white women, is that you can't think for yourselves. You just blindly vote however your husband tells you to vote. You know, this is insulting to every conservative woman in America. You know, the Democrats want us to think that they are the party that really is for women. But how do you become the party of women when every time you turn around, they are insulting you in one way or another? All right, well, let's pick up some phone calls. A couple of quick things. Arnold Schwarzenegger is suing Big Oil for first-degree murder. Do you know that? Arnold Schwarzenegger, Big Oil is killing people, and they know they're doing it. That's first-degree murder. Now, this is a guy that used to fly his private jet from Southern California to Sacramento every day when he was the governor. Got any idea what kind of footprint he'd have doing that kind of thing? And he's also a guy who was out there telling people to air dry their clothes. If you do that, you can save 700 pounds of carbon dioxide. Remember Barbara Streisand said that? And somebody asked her, well, do you air dry your clothes? You hang them out to dry in the yard? And she was just stunned, had no answer. Here's another story about the environmental movement. There's 1 billion butterflies that are dead. There's only 30 million butterflies that are left alive. 90% loss of population in the last 20 years. You know who is to blame for it? Environmentalists. And the renewable fuel standard, it's ethanol that's killing all of these butterflies. Monarch butterflies are down 90% in the last 20 years. Only 30 million of them remaining. And so anyway, their policies have killing the butterflies. Here's a social worker in Virginia that was denied, well, she was fired from her job because she had a concealed carry permit. She was not carrying a gun. She wasn't using her concealed carry permit. She just had one. What? And she got fired, yeah. Wow. She was a social worker in the city of Roanoke. She was fired from her job for being a legal concealed carry permittee. 3 police officers showed up at her place of work to escort her out of the place because she was deemed a safety risk simply because she had a concealed carry permit, and she wasn't even in possession of a firearm.
So let me get this straight. 3 policemen with guns,
came into their place.
A gun.
Yeah, who's the risk
had
here?
Just a piece of paper.
She said, here's some rhetorical questions. Was my gun on me? No. Has it ever been on me during my job or visits or anything related to work? No. When I told them that it has never been on me during work, what did they say? How do we know that? Search me. Do I have a criminal record? No. She's 5'2" and 140 pounds and wondered why she needed to be escorted out by 3 heavily armed police officers. So anyway, lost a job for simply having a concealed carry permit.
Not only her constitutional right, but also a right that she went and got classes for and paid money for the ability to have that permit.
Well, and you think about this Kai Feldblum for a second, to go back to that. She's equal employment opportunity. You know, if that place of business, she takes a complaint to the EEOC and Kai Feldblum is receiving, tough darts.
Throw it out.
Yeah, you should have known better than to get a concealed carry permit. What kind of knucklehead are you? And that's the end of that deal. All right, well, let's go to the phones. 888-589-8840. Load it up, 888-589-8840.
We do have one request from Facebook Live. They prefer if you play any more Hillary clips, which you said you're not. If you do, please let her know so they can turn it down and just tell her what she said.
Tell her what she said.
In your own
Read the
voice.
transcript.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Richard in Odessa, Texas. Richard, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, I wanted to talk about a legal pathway to citizenship. It still exists. Me and my wife have 3 children from other countries, and we adopted them legally. It's still possible. So there is a pathway to citizenship.
Cool.
Secondly, Melania Trump is a legal immigrant, and so nobody really talks about that much, but Donald is not against immigration. He just wants legal immigration.
Yeah. Very good, Richard. Let me ask you a quick question about your adopted kids. How did they become citizens?
Well, our daughter was orphaned in China until she was 5 years old, and we went through the normal processes. It was called INS at that time, and we had to be fingerprinted by the FBI, and that took time, and go through the whole process. There is a process that's already in place, and then our son from Latvia and our son from the Republic of Georgia, and so you can do this. It is possible.
Now,
to be legal.
Richard, at what point were they declared United States citizens? Where in the process did that happen?
Okay, so when we filled out the paperwork and they arrived in the United States, they were legal aliens.
Uh-huh.
And then we readopted them in Texas. We went through the process in Texas, so there'd be no trouble with other countries in case there's wars or other problems later. So probably a month after they got here.
Okay, and they became American citizens.
We have 6 adopted children.
Wow.
And one of them just became a U.S. airman in the Air Force.
Fantastic.
This weekend. And so we're very proud of our children.
That's great, Richard. We're proud of you. And, you know, it does illustrate the fact that we are not opposed to immigration. We are only opposed to illegal immigration. The United States has the most open-handed, open-hearted immigration policy of any nation in the world. We allow 1.1 million people every single year to legally immigrate to the United States. All right, thank you, Richard. Very good call. Let's go to Jeffrey in Farmington, Missouri. What's on your mind, Jeffrey? Talk to me.
Yes, these sound bites are so informative. I've learned a lot. Your show's the best. And, you know, especially with Hillary, why she keeps justifying why she didn't make president and this and that. You know, maybe this, a lot of women can learn from this. Maybe she's not putting enough, the right kind of quality ice cream in Bill Clinton's mouth.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, another thing about it is just what a sore loser she is. I mean, you know, when somebody is complaining like 10 years after the championship game and they lost it on what they think was a bad umpire's call, you know, at some point you have to say to them, look, you just got to get over it. You got to move on. You can't reverse it. You can't undo it. You don't get a do-over. Just accept it and move on. All right, let's go to Kevin in Wichita, Kansas. Kevin, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, I appreciate your show and all the information you're giving. So I was thinking about the Apprentice show that Trump was on. How many people that do not like him at all watch that show every week? And they learn business. They learned all kinds of strategies, and they end up loving to hate him, you know, now, but it's just kind of interesting point of interest, you know, for
and the reality is he was basically the same guy on The Apprentice that he is as president. I mean, Donald Trump is just Donald Trump, you know. So if they liked him as the Apprentice dude, then the reason they don't like him doesn't really have anything to do with Donald Trump, with his personality, with his persona. It's his politics that they despise and don't like. And maybe they don't like his political personality, but he's the same guy. All right, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jennifer in Foley, Alabama. Jennifer, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to comment about what Hillary is trying to say about Trump and all of us terrible deplorables. You know, the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. The Democratic Party is the one that is pushing all this abortion, especially Margaret Sanger, who happens to be one of Hillary's most admired people. And yet we're the ones that are against the national, the black race and the colored race and all of these things that she said about us. I don't think so. She's just wanting to look in the mirror and not at herself, but at somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, Jennifer, about the historic connection between the Democratic Party and racism. I mean, the Democratic Party was the party that defended slavery. The Democratic Party was the party that opposed the 13th Amendment, that emancipated the slaves officially, constitutionally. The Democratic Party was the party that opposed the 14th Amendment that gave them citizenship. The Democratic Party was the party that opposed the 15th Amendment that gave them the right to vote. The Democratic Party was the party of Jim Crow. Democratic Party was the party of segregation. Democratic Party was the party that opposed the Civil Rights Act, 1964. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget, we are fighting a winnable war. God bless you. See you right back here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Coffee is coffee with a cause. Not only is it a delicious way to start your day, but it can also wake you up to the idea of supporting the American Family Association through a product